Going for two, kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two, sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Personal League podcast, and we are doing the Elite Any Given Sunday League. There is two leagues, apparently, and one of them is an Elite, and that's what we are doing tonight.
And one of them's not, which means you suck.
All right, so what is a Personal League podcast, you might ask? These gentlemen have paid to have us break down their league. We're going to be counting them down. We rank them. We're going to count them down from 10 to 1. But before we get to that, let's meet the panel. To my, I guess, my right, my left, however you want to look at it, Mr. Shane Barrett. He is the host of the Poly Playoff Tournament.
You did it!
And contributor for rotoheat.com. You can follow him on Twitter at FFShaneB. I finally got it right. It took 3 times to do it, but I got it.
Slow clap. That wasn't really a slow clap, but whatever. I'm so proud of you, Jeff. It's only taken you 3 years to get it right.
Yeah, it's taken me. I'm sure I'll mess it up again. I actually had to read it. I'm going to be looking at it on the thing, like reading it. I don't say Polly's pocket.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's Friday. I worked from home today, and we get to talk about fantasy football, so it's a good day.
Good stuff. I had you on. This is the 3rd time in a week, literally in a week.
I know. Are you tired of me yet?
All right. Also joining us tonight, Mr. Brian Ford. He is the host of the Dynasty Saturday Night 5 right here on Going for Two Live on Saturdays. He also hosts the Dynasty Fever podcast. Follow him on Twitter at FFJunkie_. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how we doing? Glad to be here. I haven't been on PLP in a minute. Got my best friend in the world, Godstrike, already popping off in the chat. I too participated in a poly playoff. A little different meaning, but you know, it was competitive. It was yeah.
Good stuff. All right, as I mentioned at the top, guys, with a Personal League podcast, for those of you that aren't in this league or haven't seen these before, I gave the rosters to these two gentlemen here. They ranked them from 10 to 1, 10 being the team they would least want to take over, and 1 being the team they would most want to take over. From that, we created a consensus ranking that we'll count down tonight from 10 to 1. And then I also assigned these gentlemen 5 teams each to be the quote-unquote expert when we get to those teams in the rankings. Yeah, I say expert, with the quotation marks there, Shane. When we get to their team in the ranking, we'll let them break them down. Strengths, weaknesses, trade ideas, things that make the team better, etc., etc. Typically, at this point, I will plug the PLP and tell you where to sign up. But unfortunately, we have been booked solid for the rest of the year. There is no more open dates. But if you want to sign up for next year, the website is goingfor2.com/PLP. We're already taking orders for next season. We always book up. I get it every year. I'm sure in August, I'm going to get plenty of people asking me, hey, can you do me a PLP? Unfortunately, you missed the boat. We've already booked up. So if you want to get one, get in now. Because I know Godstrike in this league, they have 3 that they purchased last year at this time. So get in early. Again, it's goingfor2.com/PLP to get on that.
Or you can sign up for Poly's playoff and potentially win a PLP for next year.
That is right. That is one of the prizes for playing in the tournament. You can win one of these PLPs for free. Make sure you get in that tournament. It's for a great cause. And I think this year it has some best ball, right, Shane?
Yes. Half the league is going to be best ball, and I was actually working on breaking that down. I think we're actually split right down the middle right now of people that have signed up for Manage and signed up for best ball. So
nice.
Go ahead and sign up. We're about 70 short of our target from last year. So would love to maintain that as well.
Good stuff. All right, let's jump right into team number 10.
Number 10.
Number 10 team ranked as high as 9, as low as 10. It is Super Bowl Brabs. And Shane, this is your team here. Give us your breakdown.
Yeah. All right. So I actually ranked you 9. So I would like props to be given for that. My number 10 team is coming up, and we'll talk about that. But I think what probably ranked you the lowest is your quarterback room. I think you probably have one of, if not the weakest quarterback room in Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr. Now you have some intriguing backups in Joe Flacco and Sam Howell. Intriguing for Flacco because Anthony Richardson is injury prone, and I will fight anyone that disagrees with me on that. If you go back and look at his injury history in college and in the NFL, he's injury prone. Sorry about it. And then Sam Howell is a guy that I've been super high on. If you listen to any of these PLPs last year, I loved Sam Howell. So I think he may have some opportunity to start this year. So that maybe solidifies it a little bit more as well. Your running backs are solid with Alvin Kamara and Brian Robinson, not Bijan. I almost did what Kyle did last time. Kamara is one of those guys that I don't feel like is being talked about enough, but in a dynasty league, he's getting to that age where he's old, and people don't like old running backs. So that's another reason I probably pulled you down to 9 and 10. Debo's not a guy that I've ever been in love with, but after watching the Receiver Show on Netflix, I'm liking him more. Like he's kind of a badass, and he is an offensive weapon. Amari Cooper, pretty steady. Terry McLaurin, pretty steady. Evan Ingram finishes tight end 2 last year. Calvin Ridley's in a new place. Who knows what's going to happen to him? And then 2 question marks in your starting lineup, at least at the one I'm looking at. I always do this. I'm sorry, Jeff. I look at the spreadsheet, not at what you have pulled up on the screen. But you've got Xavier Legette and Blake Corum. I like Xavier Legette. I was just on a local show earlier tonight talking about how for not as fantasy savants, he could be a sleeper rookie pick. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, in Carolina. They've got a new coaching system. I think Bryce Young's going to be a lot better. So I think he's got some potential upside. Blake Corum to me is an insurance policy. He is, if Kyron Williams gets hurt, I think he would fall perfectly in line as a backup. And then on your bench, some interesting players I think are Jalen Wright, especially from a dynasty perspective. You've got the guy that's in front of him on the depth chart, Raheem Mostert. I can't even do it. I can't even make myself do it. We're going to skip Antonio Gibson. Curtis Samuel, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Dontavian Wicks are all 3 guys that I think are potential moves for you later on in the season if they go off. Like if Samuel has a blow-up game, if Wan'Dale has a blow-up game, if Wicks has a blow-up game, be willing to move off of those guys because their value increases to a certain point that you don't think it's going to surpass. Those would be the guys I'd be looking at to potentially move. And then I think the other reason that you probably got ranked a little lower too is the lack of a first-round pick and subpar-ish draft capital, because if I know these teams from previous leagues all about TDs and Meadowlands are usually teams that we rank pretty high, so those are probably going to end up being later picks for you.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown, and I think the reason I had them at 10 is strictly the age of this roster, right? I mean, you mentioned some guys, Alvin Kamara, Raheem Mostert.
Debo isn't a spring chicken either.
Debo's getting up there. Amari Cooper's getting up there. Terry McLaurin is still young-ish, but he's been in the league a couple years. Curtis Samuel's a little bit older, and he's injury prone. And then you don't really have a contingency plan to replace those guys because the guys on your bench really, and other than Xavier Legette maybe, Dontavian Wicks is a nice piece. But there's no contingency plan of what you're going to do once these guys age out or slowly become unusable, and you don't. And as Shane mentioned, you don't have a ton of draft picks to replace that. And then sometimes you can get those guys that are older but still hold a ton of value, and I don't know if you have that either. Like no one's buying Raheem Mostert right now. No one thinks he can repeat his 18 touchdown season or whatever it was last year that he had. People are a little nervous about Terry McLaurin, the rookie quarterback. Amari Cooper, is Deshaun Watson going to be what they all thought he was going to be when they signed that huge contract? It's a lot of question marks that it's going to be hard to move some of these older guys to get younger or to get those pieces. So that's why I had him at 10. Brian, you also had him at 10. What are your thoughts on this team here?
So my notes included the question: is this person even active? So and apparently the chat is confirming this person may or may not even exist. Yeah, it's overall it's old. It's a meh roster. Some RBs that I like. Like I like B-Rob, underrated. I think he's they got Jalen Wright. Love Jalen Wright. Estime is a real good stash for now. These are the type of guys that are like injury away or whatever, and you can trade them in the season or even have standalone value. But there's just like a whole lot of players that just don't belong on a roster, let alone a roster in a 10-team league, let alone a roster in a 10-team league that doesn't start a tight end. What purpose is Gerald Everett serving? I liked Mechie a lot coming out of college. Very sad story what's happened to him. I don't know. Is he like wide receiver 5 on the depth chart now? Like, why is he even on your roster? There's no first round pick. This looks like the roster of somebody who's just not active much in the league and not really trying to hey man, you're paying the prize pool and that's what you're doing. As far as like a recommendation, it would be sell pieces like Carr in a super flex, has some value. Yeet Kamara out. Look at the average age here of Debo, who's oft injured, Cooper, McLaurin, and Calvin Ridley, who is way overrated. Like, you gotta I don't like full nuke rebuilds. They're really hard to like dig out of, but like we're almost there with this roster.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brian. I like to have somewhat of a rebuild, but I also like to look at the team and say, okay, I can sell this player and this player because they're at the height of their value right now. I don't see, with the exception of maybe Jordan Love being there, maybe I can move him for a haul, but he's probably also your best player and he's still young, so I don't know if I'm wanting to move him. So maybe Evan Ingram is a guy you can move, but in the league you don't got to start a tight end. Is his value even that good? So I don't see that one piece where I'm like, okay, I can move this guy and get a haul, get draft picks, get a younger guy. I just don't see that with this roster, and I just unfortunately had him at 10 because of that. Jamie asking the question, can this team win a championship with this roster as constructed if he got lucky? In a 10-team league, maybe. I mean, he's got some good pieces there. Raheem Mostert repeats what he did last year. If Deebo Samuel has a great season, if Jordan Love is the quarterback that we think that, he could be.
I just don't think he's got the quarterback room to do it after Love.
Yeah, it would definitely take a lot of pieces
Like,
in the right place for that to happen.
Rodgers would have to come back and be Rodgers.
Right.
And we don't know if that's going to happen. And if he's not, Derek Carr would have to pull something out of his butthole that hasn't happened in a long time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I don't think this is a playoff team. I think it's a rebuild, and it's going to be a long-term rebuild because the pieces aren't there to move.
Can I just ask? I know that I babble and I stretch things out. Like, I just want to ask a question because it came up a lot in the notes for the teams I'm going to talk about. Like a when to move them kind of thing, right? Dontavian Wicks. I like him, underrated. The peripherals are great. I think if you assume rational coaching, he's going to be on the league more. He's going to be on the field more above, like a Dobbs and sometimes even other guys. Do you trade him now that he's like the offseason darling because it can go down in camp, or are you waiting for it to build upward and for him to have like a spike week early in the season? I think either way, the price is relatively the same, but if you hold too long, you do risk the downside plus the injury. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think personally with this roster, I'm probably holding on to Dontavian Wicks and hoping that he could be the receiver 2 in Green Bay, and then maybe I consider moving him only because I have Jordan Love on the team as well. So if I have him there, I potentially have a nice little stack. I don't know in a 10-team league that I'm going to get the value that I would want to sell Wicks with that upside. What about you, Shane?
I am holding till a spike week and then selling him. I think the value on him now is probably where you could get a nice haul probably for what you acquired him for. But I think after a spike week, which I think could potentially happen early for him based on what we're hearing, you could get enough on top of what you could get now that it'd be worth the hold.
Yep. And all about TD says way too much time spent on this shit roster. So let's go ahead and use that as our cue to move to team number 9.
All right.
Number 9.
Number 9 team ranked as high as 8, as low as 9. It is Hurts So Good and Brian. This is your squad here.
Where's the John Mellencamp audio drop, Jeff?
Yeah.
Come on, let's get on this. For Shane and others watching, you may have to Google John Mellencamp.
I know
yes.
who he is. I don't know what song you're referencing, but I know who he is.
Hurts So Good. Yeah, I had them ranked 9, right in line pretty much with everybody else. I see probably too few QBs, especially in a 10-team league. I would probably want a better QB3 than Daniel Jones. I happen to think there is upside there. In 2022, he was he had a season where he was, I think, the third person ever to run for 700 and pass for 3,000 in the same season. So there's a there, but there's also he could be benched because the injury guarantees and the offense and the team could just be gross. And so I would probably want a different QB3 or at least add a QB to the roster. I think, listen, Godstrike, I hate you and I love you, but like every league, like no tight end premium. Like if you're playing with the same guys over and over again, spice it up a little bit because because like in my notes, it's like, ... in a league with no tight end premium. Like if you're not even starting a tight end and you don't have a tight end premium either, we've got too many tight ends on this team. I like the top 3 running backs, but there's, some age there. Overall, pretty meh. And I like to, I'll get into some specifics in a minute. I like to have a few more running backs than this. Like my running back to wide receiver ratio is different than I think the way that some people build. Overall, I think your wide receivers are strong. There's no first or second in 2025, which is something that I look for a lot. I like to have draft picks in the cupboard. So, getting into specific players, Taylor and Mixon. I love JT and I really think, he's lost time to this contract stuff and the injury and all that. But like, it's probably going to, surprise some people this year. Mixon's in a good offense is going to get a lot of volume. But again, he's like when we talk about taking over orphans, like would I want to take over a team with like Joe Mixon? I think, he's an aging running back. He's on his second contract, his second team. I love Tank Dell. Obviously, love AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. DJ Moore is interesting. If you're going to have a tight end, Trey McBride's a good one. Again, another aging running back with Pollard. Dobbins may not. I mean, like he may not even play. Zach Moss is like the poster boy for the projectable volume, boring dead zone running back that people are overpaying for. Javonte Williams, like there's a wide range of outcomes there that there could be some bad outcomes the way things are trending in camp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've got age in Tyler Boyd. We've got question marks in Brown. And then look at this bench here with Jatavian Sanders, Dave Njoku, Taysom Hill, and Pat Freiermuth. Like I think there's a couple guys there that are going to have good years, but what value do they have to you as tight ends in a league like this?
Yep.
Right. So, as far as like what I would do if I took it over, I would shed the tight ends and target guys whose value will go up. It may have to be on the waiver wire, right? And I would especially on this roster look for young and or backup running backs, because you're going to want that stable of running backs. Injuries happen, you build for chaos, and then you're able to trade them. I would trade picks for pieces and cheap points. This is not a team that can't compete this year. If you want to compete this year, I would make the trades for cheap points. there's a lot of players in Dynasty where it's like I could get the same or close points as player A, but also with player B, but he's boring or maybe a little bit older, and I could get a plus on top. So look for ways to do that. Look for cheaper points. Mixon, Pollard, Moss. One of those, two of those, tier down, add a pick, get younger. I don't want all those on my roster right now. And maybe even you have a very strong top 4 to 5 wide receivers. And so, you may have a good trade chip in there too to move. And that way you can just shift where the value is in your roster to like picks, younger running backs, and fewer tight ends.
Yeah, love that breakdown. And go to your point where you were like, this roster is not one that can't compete. I think we're looking at the 2023 champion. Actually, this roster actually won the chip last year. They got the little icon next to their name over there.
Oh, see, I told you they could compete.
Yeah, so this team won the whole thing last year, and we're ranking them 9. Based a lot of things on what Brian just said, the roster has some issues. It does have some great players. Jalen Hurts, obviously, Jonathan Taylor, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown. There's a lot of great players there. Obviously, they won the championship, so the roster is overall pretty decent. Shane, you had this team at 8 like I did. What did you see about this team?
Yeah, I think just to kind of reiterate what Brian said, I think Daniel Jones being the QB3, and then why the fuck do you have 6 tight ends? Like, why?
Yeah.
I don't like that is why a main driving factor in ranking you at 8. Like, they're all solid, but why?
I think we talked about this a little bit on the last show, right? Like, there's 10 teams, right? And there's only so many tight ends. If we told every team to shed all their tight ends, like they have to go somewhere, right? One of the teams has to have the tight ends because at some point you're going to have them. So until they decide to change the tight end premium, it's one of those.
I don't even need tight end premium. I just need an actual tight end in the starting lineup, and that would make me feel better about it.
What's Taysom Hill's points per week? Like, what's that getting you?
Yeah.
And then can you get that for $2 on the waiver? Like, and that person you get for $2 on the waiver wire also has in their range of outcomes a ceiling that's higher than Taysom Hill, like a rookie wide receiver like Devontae Walker or something. Like, he's maybe rostered in this league, but just for example, like this is the team that's chugging along like everything's fine and I'm going to keep winning championships, and then they're going to hit a cliff. Right. So the advice that I'm giving is start shifting some things around now because you want to be sustainable. Something that I'm trying to do with my leagues, and I will admit I'm not doing it well enough because I have too many leagues and not enough time, is move towards like I think Jacob Sanderson calls it a conveyor belt. Like, instead of like a roller coaster of constant boom bust, championship rebuild, every year you're just solid. You've got a solid roster. You got some blue chip players, some cheap points, and some draft picks. Right. And try to get that every year because mathematically you'll win. You have a shot at winning more championships over time, and you'll never have to do a nuke rebuild.
Yep. 100%. And in the chat there, Tim just mentioned that this is actually the back-to-back champion of this league. He actually won 2 championships back-to-back. So that just goes to show you that, in the 10-team league that, anybody can win. Because I mean,
do not rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
Me and this guy have something in common.
Do not be content with it. You continue to plug away, make some moves. All right, let's get to team number 7. No, we're on team number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8 roster, a little bit of disparity here. Ranked as high as 7, as low as 10. It is Man of the People. And Shane, this is your team, and you had them at 10.
Yeah, I did. And I think I'm not that sorry, Jeff. Even though I did rank him last year, I think on one of your shows as like a sleeper QB, I'm not the biggest fan of Brock Purdy. And then your QB3 is essentially the Atlanta quarterback room. And that's great if Kirk Cousins comes back and is Kirk Cousins. But if he's hampered by that injury at all, then you're relying on Michael Penix Jr., and I don't know if that's going to do enough for you in his rookie year. Excuse me. And then I think that because it's a 10-team league, honestly, after like the top 4, it was throwing darts for me. Like all those teams from 5 to 10 were really, really, really close for me. So it was like, I've got to rank somebody at 10. And so unfortunately, man of the people, that you fell into that hole. And I think other than the QB room, there's a little bit of a lack of depth here. Again, looking at the spreadsheet, not looking at hold on, let me look at what Jeff's got pulled up, see what I'm looking at. Starting lineup. Scroll down. Okay, so like DeAndre Hopkins is on your bench and Lockett is on your bench on the spreadsheet. Both of those guys are solid, but old, and there's not a ton of depth to replace them, especially like in a youth movement, even to replace them. So I would be looking. I would move DeAndre Hopkins in a heartbeat. I would honestly try and move Christian Watson too. I'm not the biggest Christian Watson guy. He's hurt too much. But then you've got like a solid core in Gibbs, Neighbors, Waddle. I'll throw McConkey in there, Cooper Kupp. Like, it's a solid team, but you lack depth on your bench, and that's what scares me and what ultimately pushed you down to 10.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I had this team obviously ranked a little bit higher than you. I had them at 7. And I think it's a lot to do with some of the players that I really like, that I'm really high in this year. George Pickens, I think, has a third-year breakout. Everyone knows that I really like Tua Tagovailoa. Malik Neighbors, obviously, on this roster as well. Jalen Waddle's a guy that I think has a bounce back after a season with injuries. The quarterback room with Kirk Cousins and Tua Tagovailoa isn't the sexiest, but they're going to be consistent enough that I think that they can compete with this roster. You mentioned Brock Purdy. Obviously he was QB6 last year, so a lot of the hate that goes around, Purdy's still going to be producing pretty well. You got Jonathan Brooks there. I don't know why you still have Dalvin Cook on the roster, honestly. Get rid of him at this point. Tajay Spears, Jalen Polk, a couple young guys there. We don't know what Spears is going to do in that Tennessee backfield. Brian, you had him ranked 7 as well, just like I did. What did you see with this roster?
There are some names that pop out that are some of my guys, and also like I was just pretty way down on teams 9 and 10, and this is not as bad a shape as they're in. I mean, so in a 10-team league, there a lot of people will say, oh well, everybody is going to have some really good quarterback, and so the studs matter more, and because it separates you more, because like who has a team that can beat a Mahomes, a Hurts, and Allen week to week, right? So we don't have that here, right? But we do have a very solid top 3 plus Penix, and so I think that's enough. I think you could go into the year with that and find a way to shed a little bit there. I mean, Gibbs and Brooks are dynamic young running backs. If you're going to have running backs on your roster, have good young ones. Love them. Love Malik Neighbors. I'm a Waddle guy. I'm not a Pickens guy. I'm a Lag guy. Cooper Kupp could surprise some people. I'm a Watson guy. Tajay Spears is my homeboy. Like, I have him RB13 in Dynasty. Like,
that's high.
I'm also a bit more of a JMO truther than consensus. You've got there's probably somebody with a quarterback need who wants Jacoby Brissett, because the word is he's at least going to play some games to start the year. So you could maybe move him now, maybe if someone gets an injury in camp, et cetera, et cetera. I like Roshan. I think he's the best overall back in that backfield. He's going to get the high value touches with receptions and goal line. Madison, yeet. Corley, fun, upside. Same for Polk. McCaffrey, a lot of sharp people think he's a sleeper. Nuke Hopkins is old. Yeah, maybe he's a pretty good trade chip for a real contender. But he's gonna eat, and if that coach can fix, they're doing a lot to put some guardrails on Will Levis, and so it could be a productive year. Brandon Cooks, who else is going to eat besides Lamb and a little bit of Ferguson? So I think Lockett's a guy I might trade, because I think we're going to be hitting that year where it starts to fall off the cliff now, and JSN will rise. Definitely some upside to Shakir After week 7, he outscored Diggs despite getting 60 fewer targets. Trey Palmer's a big play guy, and I don't really need him in a 10-team league. So the notes that I had for this, let's see, man of the people was, again, I said, a little too many wide receivers and not enough running backs. I want to shift that ratio a bit. And after like the top few running backs, there's not much after, and those two things go together. So I would move maybe some Lockett, some Nuke, some Cooks, something like that, and invest in some young upside running backs, because they have standalone value, they have contingent value, trade chips for injury and that sort of thing. So that's something. I mean, definitely a team that can compete, and the draft capital isn't terrible. As a communist, I would love the team man of the people to be the number 1 team, but hey, I'll settle for this.
All right, yeah, good stuff. Yeah, we didn't talk too much about the draft capital, but yeah, they've got decent draft capital. They still own their first next year, which is super important. So, yeah, I think overall, I think they still own their first, right? Or am I looking at?
They've got the 26 first. They don't have their
seeing
25 first. They have 2 seconds.
You're right. You got 2 seconds and third. Yep, you're right. They don't have their first this year. Overall, I think, like Brian said, I think they're still, they can compete if they make a couple moves here and there. I think they'll be in the thick of things. All right, let's move to team number 7.
Number 7.
Number 7, ranked as high as 7 and as low as 9. It is Diehards. And Brian, this is your squad here.
Welcome to the party, pal. Die Hard joke, anyone? I will die on the hill that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. I don't care what people say. I don't care what the director says. I'm old enough to remember when the idea of it being a Christmas movie was silly. All right, enough with this. All right, what are we doing? Die Hard, team number 7, lucky number 7. I had him at 8, so I'm close. I had him at 8 and not 9 because I think there's some 1-year upside on this team. Like, if I'm looking at the team and I'm like, okay, I don't like taking over this orphan, but I might win this year. I might have some 1-year upside. In general, though, too old, not enough draft capital, and a very meh team. That was like the start of my notes.
This was the team.
Yeah. This is the team that I was talking about with Doc, who likes older players, right? Too few, too old RBs, too old wide receivers, too many irrelevant players, especially for a 10-team league. For example,
Jared Stidham,
Joe Milton, Justice Hill, Isaiah Spiller, Zay Jones, Alec Pierce, Tip Raymond. I understand he's a day 2 tight end. He's very athletic. He might surprise some people, but he's a run blocking specialist. They invested in him so they could unleash McBride. No reason to have Tip Raymond on a roster. But means, in a 10-teamer, no, but he's got some best ball upside. So basically with this team, even if I'm competing this year, I want to do what we were doing with that other team and start shifting some value and shifting some pieces. But if I was taking it over, I would not do like a nuke rebuild, but I would be more aggressive about trading more of the olds for youth picks and cheaper points. So for folks who may not see on the screen or the audio listeners, I mean, CMC and Barkley, you look at that and you're like, if this is redraft, you got 2 top 8 running backs or something like that. If it's dynasty, I listen, I know CMC is CMC, but even a very good running back on a great team, you're betting on a 28-year-old running back to repeat the health, usage, volume, and production. And RB1s, the RB1 almost never repeats as the RB1 the following year. So, I know nobody's fading, CMC, but he's a trade now for me. Again, I'm probably much lower on Diggs. Some sharp people think no, he's going to play angry for a contract and he's still an elite separator and he'll be fine. Again, Keenan Allen, I think he's got a strong early, part of the year, but as he ages and those hamstrings get hammy and Badunze starts to rise, you may see him decline. He might be a trade now. Sam Laporta, you got a top 3 to 5 dynasty tight end there. Doesn't do much in this league, but and again, look at it's like the old running back parade. Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones. Probably not much of a use for Goddard in this league. I want better, backups, better quarterbacks after my top three, but my top three are good here in that we have Josh Allen, who's a beast, although I'm probably lower on him than everybody, Stafford, and we have Goff as well. Funny that we have Goff and Stafford, right? And how their histories are connected. Ray MF and Davis, keep that guy. My hot take, if you will, for 2024 is that James Cook and Ray Davis are going to be a discount light version of Gibbs and Montgomery. When Joe Brady took over that team, they went from second lowest run rate to second highest run rate. We're looking at a lot of targets for Gibbs. They want to save Allen. They don't want him with 15 rushing touchdowns this year. I assure you that. And Ray Davis is that guy. Short yardage, goal line. He can pass protect, catch a few passes. It's like he's got upside. He's a plug and play. He's an old prospect that's going to go right in. The learning curve's not going to be much. And you got to root for the story. Ty Chandler, he's my man. Great contingent upside there, and even some standalone on some explosive plays and passes. But again, like Justice Hill and Isaiah Spiller, yeet. Jalen McMillan getting buzz, good stash. Like he could end up surprising a lot of people. I think I liked him in college better than I liked Polk. But when we weigh draft capital in the situation, I lean Polk a little bit. But they're in the same tier for me in my rankings right now. They're in a bucket of young players together. Yeah, I mean Zay Jones, Alec Pierce, yeet. Tip Raymond, yeet. Hunter Henry, tight end friendly offense taking over in New England. He's going to have I don't want to say bounce back because he's always doing okay, but he's maybe going to surprise some people. Wait for that 2 touchdown week and trade him. And we've got our first in 25 and 26. So a lot to like about this team. There's 1 year upside to this team, but again, this is like writing on the wall, red light flashing. We got to start trading some of these olds.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great redraft roster, right? Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. Keenan Allen's probably a redraft guy at this point. Stephon Diggs, Aaron Jones. These are all redraft guys that you want to have on your roster for this season. But going forward, not so sure you'd want to keep them on your roster. But as you mentioned, there's plenty of room to move some of these guys. Christian McCaffrey still has, that peak value that you could move if you wanted to. Barkley, Derrick Henry in Baltimore, probably had a spike in value with the trade to the Ravens. You mentioned Keenan Allen sort of eventually being replaced by Rome Odunze, but if he starts off hot, maybe that's your opportunity to move him early in the season as well. So I think there's lots of opportunity with this team. I think I had them ranked 9. Honestly, looking at the roster, I think maybe I had them too low. I think sometimes we're splitting hairs between teams you want to take over.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and you just push guys down that maybe you shouldn't have. But
they just tend to be in bunches. It's like this is the 7, 8, 9 bunch, and there's not much difference between the two. It's like pick your flavor. But like again, we're talking about hey Brian, here's an orphan, and I look at the roster and I'm like, shit, I need an AARP card to deal with these guys.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into team number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6 team ranked as high as 5, as low as 6, and it is K-Cat 1111. Shane, this is your team here.
Didn't I have this team last week? I swear I had K-Cat 11 last week. All righty. Well, you don't have it pulled up, so I'll just go off the spreadsheet. Lamar Jackson, Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Justin Jefferson, Roma Dunze, Jaden Reed, Mark Andrews, Trey Benson, Travis Kelce, Chris Godwin, Zamir White, Geno Smith. That's a freaking solid starting lineup. Again, you have 2 tight ends and a non-tight end premium. You don't have to start a tight end. Why? Trade Travis Kelce. Find somebody that believes in him. Trade him to the guy that has Mahomes. I love Travis Etienne, and I know Brian. I think this is one of those players where Brian and I disagree, but I love Travis Etienne. I do think he will. This is where Brian and I think agree. I do think he'll take a hit in volume this year. As a Jags fan, I'm hoping he does, because if we want to make a playoff run, you've got to have him healthy. And I think towards the end of last year, he just ran out of gas. Justin Jefferson, one of the best players in the league. Jaden Reed has a ton of upside, especially with them using him in the rushing game. Trey Benson's a great dynasty running back to have, because James Conner is approaching that age cliff for running backs. And has his own injury history. So Trey Benson could take over this year. Zamir White is a guy that, like, he's kind of just a guy, but if he has a couple blow-up games, I wouldn't mind trading him. I think Chris Godwin is actually a candidate for, I guess we could call it a bounce back. We've seen him have a ceiling as high as wide receiver 2. I don't know if he'll ever get back to that, but the offensive coordinator in Tampa, it was the offensive coordinator or some role in Los Angeles when Cooper Kupp blew up out of the slot. So I have a lot of hope for Chris Godwin this year. You've got a solid QB3, QB2, and Russell Wilson. You also have James Conner sitting on your bench, so you've got that contingency plan. You have Michael Thomas on your roster. Just cut him. Why? Just cut him. And then, but your depth is decent at wide receiver 2 with Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, and Rashid Shaheed. Ben Sinnott is a good young tight end. It doesn't matter in this league. And then you have decent draft capital. I think you can contend with this roster, and you have enough youth to continue going forward. There's just a couple of guys that, like, once they kind of have that peak game, I'd be willing to sell pretty quickly.
Yeah, great breakdown. I think, you mentioned the Kelsey and Mark Andrews tandem there, and I think you're right. I think you move either of the two. I think you could move, if you can move them for anything of value. Because the fact that you're starting 2 of them in a league where you don't have to start any, scares me a little bit. I know they're 2 of the more elite tight ends, but I think I was trying to make a trade, and I think the top tight end last year averaged 14.8 PPR points per game. The receiver 20 averaged the same amount. So that goes to show you where the tight ends sort of fall into the hierarchy when it's not a premium league. At a premium there, and then it's a different story. But right now, I think with the tight ends being so devalued in this league, being able to, having to start 2 of them kind of makes you a little bit behind the 8 ball in that sense.
Yeah. I am worried about the running back depth on this team. Like, after Pacheco, Etienne, we'll call it the Arizona running backs, and Zamir, it's kind of bare. You've only got Jamal Williams and Deuce Vaughn. Now, I did in Scott Fishbowl take both Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn because who the hell knows what Dallas is going to do? Are they really going to run dusty-ass Ezekiel Elliott out there and give him 25 carries a game? I think they'd be stupid to do so, but that's Jerry Jones for you. However, someone else has to touch the ball occasionally at the very least, and I think that could be Dowdle or Vaughn. So I don't hate having Vaughn there. Fair
enough. Any quick comments on this team, Brian, before we get to the next one?
Look at that with the quick qualifier. I hear you, passive aggressive. One thing, it may turn shows that either have me or Kyle on them into 2-hour shows, but it might be neat if like next year or later in the off season, we do like, at least for a couple teams that were assigned, like, work out a trade, like find a trade for that team. Yeah.
I like it. That's a good call. Anything you wanted to say here besides that?
Kitty Cat, it's kind of the same, we're trying to shift from, too many wide receivers to get more running backs, QBs after Lamar. Not a great team, but it's a middler and it's got potential.
All right, good stuff. Let's get to team number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5 team ranked as high as 5, as low as 6, and it is Meadowlands. Brian, this is your squad. Take it away.
Yeah, so I think last time we did one with Meadowlands, and there was like the little the sleeper ones in the spreadsheet, and not the very nice ones that I like here. He had a Meadowlands and a Giants logo, so I think this might be a jersey guy. So shout out to Meadowlands there, or at least a Giants fan. I don't know. Yeah, so we've got them ranked 5 overall. I had them 5, so I'm right in line with the rankings. Kind of the story with a couple teams here. After Trevor Lawrence, who I think is people are undervaluing. There's not there's not much, but it's not bad. It's kind of meh, but it's not anything to really worry about. We've got pretty good running backs overall. There's some duds, but there are some players I like. So I love Bijan, but I think Kenneth Walker is undervalued. I think Ramondre is going to be solid in an offense that is going to feature either Brissett or a rookie quarterback at some point. They're going to lean on him. They paid him. Ezekiel Elliott led the Patriots in receptions last year. So it's not like Ramondre Stevenson was, catching like hella passes where Gibson is a threat anyway. It's like Gibson's just going to do what Ezekiel Elliott did, It's kind of the same thing in Washington, right? Like people are like, oh, Eckler with B-Rob. B-Rob didn't get much passing last year. Gibson had like 50 catches or something like that. I love Rasheen Ali. I will pound the table for Rasheen Ali. He's about to Wally Pip Keaton Mitchell. He is a guy I love. Hold on to him. Warren is, Arthur Smith, say what we will about him. He can design a good offense and especially a good run game. He may not use guys the way that we think he should. But without being a head coach, and he loves to run, I think Warren is a great bet this year. I love that. Kendre definitely has some upside. Kamara, I think, is at least approaching cooked. And really what you want from him is the PPR stuff with the receiving. Jamal Williams is also, I think, approaching cooked. And I think Kendre's going to get opportunity on the ground and between the tackles. I don't love him, but he's got a well-rounded enough skill set where I think there's definitely upside relative to his price now. We've got very good wide receivers, but then again, we've got some cuttable ones at the bottom. So, for example, Olave with a new offensive coordinator who's going to do motion and play action and more intermediate targets. People love to hate him for whatever reason. It's cool now. No, he's fine. Drake London, wheels up, rocket emoji, pants tight. Like, give me all the London. I'm a big Ayuk guy. He's not going to get traded. That's both good news and bad news. But you want one of the top 8 to 10 talented wide receivers in football. He'll find a way. Higgins, also an interesting story, right? Because can he be the one somewhere else, which is what he's going to probably be doing next year? At least, almost definitely, right? The way the Bengals front office is playing this. So is he a guy that maybe you trade now, while we got a healthy Joe Burrow and a wheels up on the offense? Jordan Addison, a few days ago, it might have been a little different. My buddy did some things you shouldn't do. And so there's the suspension thing, but it's dynasty. So it's like, it's not too big a deal. You just worry about the social media drama and is he going to get traded to a team? And honestly, like when we look at him and JSN from that year of that draft class, JSN still has, I think, the potential to be a top 12 to 14 fantasy football wide receiver. Jordan Addison will always be a wide receiver too. This is per Hayden Winks, his first, third, and fourth best game last year were without Jefferson and with Cousins. Neither of those things are in place right now. So let's keep that in mind. As I said, I love Ramondre. Man, you love the bad boys. You got Rashee Rice, vroom, vroom on here, right? Again, I'm lower on him than some other people because I think I love Worthy and I'm higher on Brown than some other people are. And I think Rice is kind of in this manufactured touches role where it's like, all right, we got nothing else besides Kelsey and he's banged up. So, let's start, manufacturing some touches for this rookie. I don't think he's bad, but I kind of like, suspension or not, and I'm kind of a little lower on him. But he's dynamic and he has trade value. So those are good things. Again, you got Deshaun Watson as your second quarterback. There's a wide range of outcomes there that could turn into bad news. Same thing with Will Levis. So I would probably want to beef up my quarterback room a little bit. And then, Foreman, don't sleep on him. Short yardage, goal line. He's going to score some touchdowns. People are valuing Nick Chubb in like the RB40s. I'm like, or even higher. I'm like, what are you guys even doing? I got him in the 80s. He may not even be fantasy relevant ever again. 29-year-old running back, second catastrophic knee injury. No, thank you. So yeah, Foreman's going to score some touchdowns this year. Sermon, hey man, that's like he's a JT ankle away from some volume, and and his competition is Evan Hull. Malik Washington, love Malik Washington. Tough spot, though. 6th-round draft pick in a crowded offense now. But if anybody knows how to use him, it's Mike McDaniel, who was celebrating when he picked him and was bothering the front office for several rounds to draft him. Dortch, Short King, he's going to have a role this year. That team overall, the offensive pie is going to be bigger. Yeet Slayton, yeet Claypool, yeet Elijah Moore, and yeet Boutte. That's what I was talking about the cuttable wide receivers. I want to get rid of at least a couple of those and start bringing in some younger running backs with the waiver wire trades, et cetera, et cetera. You've got draft capital here. You've got 2 seconds and a 4th in 25, but you got an extra second in 26. So I'd like to see better. But again, like the team we talked about before, a middler with some potential.
Yeah, I love it. Great breakdown. I don't have much to add to that team. Anything you wanted to add, Shane?
Yes. If you traded Deshaun Watson off of this team, I might have ranked you 1. I loved this team when I first looked at it, and then I saw Deshaun Watson. I was like, damn it. But I've grown at least a little bit. I didn't rank him 10 because of Deshaun.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna not play every bad player, like every bad person, like you can't play fantasy football. Like half the league
fair.
Half the league is trash. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison. Like, he really does love the bad.
He's got a type. Yeah, he's got a type.
I just have a personal.
You got a police lineup on your
yeah.
So P Ryan, he's got some odds of P Ryan. This is the question I was talking about before, right? Like, do you trade him now because people are convinced that he's going to land somewhere else besides Denver? And I'm pretty convinced of that too. Or do you wait until he does land somewhere and maybe get more for him, but you risk him sitting there at Denver as an experienced vet on the bench and estimates cut, or Blake Watson is practice squad. You risk injury and you risk him landing on like an ass team. Although I don't really see anywhere that he could land where he wouldn't be walking into at least some role.
Yeah.
But if it's late in camp and the Dallas is adding P Ryan, they're adding P Ryan as Dowdle and Elliott insurance. They're not adding him to
take over.
Whatever.
Yeah.
No, agreed. All right, let's get to number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4 team ranked as high as 3, as low as 4. It is Sick Puppy. And Shane, this is your squad.
Yeah, I love this quarterback room. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield. Like, you have 4 starting quarterbacks in a super flex league. That is clutch. Your running back room is not my favorite. And like, cut Cam Akers, he's useless. And AJ Dillon is probably going to join that list soon. I'm still holding out hope for Tank Bigsby, but we'll see. As a Jags fan and as an Auburn fan, like, I need him to step up to, as I mentioned earlier, help Travis Etienne. But then your wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, both. I mean, Tyreek Hill has wide receiver 1 overall upside. Garrett Wilson has wide receiver 1 upside. I like Xavier Worthy too, Brian. I think he's going to be – I don't know if he'll be a perfect Tyreek Hill replacement, but they have 2 options now that can take the top off the defense, in Worthy and in not Tyreek Hill, Hollywood Brown. I like the Kansas City offense a lot this year. I think they're unequivocally better than they were last year. Mike Evans is a great vet, especially for a contending team. Brian Thomas Jr. has a ton of upside. Roman Wilson, question mark. Austin Eckler, what's he going to be in Washington? Then Kamani Vidal is a great dynasty running back. You've got Gabe Davis as well. So you have that stack. And then you've got fucking, what is that? 5 tight ends. Why? I know that we've talked about, like, someone's got to roster them, but trade one of them. Try and find somebody that's willing to take a shot on, like, a Cade Otton, or find the guy that has CJ Stroud and send him Dalton Schultz. Find the guy that has Brock Bowers and send him Michael Mayer, just in case. Like, I don't know. Like,
they're so low in a league like this that I just don't see any way. I mean, I'm in a 1 quarterback league that's not premium. I mean, it's like in a 1 QB, 1 tight end league, and I have a hard time trading tight ends in that league.
Yeah,
this league you don't even have to have a tight end if you didn't want one, so it's going to be almost nearly impossible to trade one of them.
Yeah, but Overall, this is a really solid squad. Could improve your depth just a little bit, which is why I think you ranked it at the bottom of this tier for me. But I think my favorite part of the roster is easily your quarterback room.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to this team, Brian?
When we look at Sick Puppy, interesting name there. I think I pretty much am in line with everybody. You know, you got depth at quarterback, not very elite, but they're solid. So you got some trade chips there. Some running backs I don't like, and not enough of them. I'm a broken record. Depth guys are meh at wide receiver. I'm a broken record. Kyle Pitts, rocket emojis. Don't let anybody tell you any different.
Yeah, 100%. And I do like the two rookies he's got in the starting lineup currently with Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy. I think both of those guys are going to be great. You mentioned Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, solid. So yeah, overall solid roster. Didn't wow me. I think I had him at 3. So still ranked pretty high because I do think there's some pieces that can be moved, some things that can be done, and there's a lot of nice things to be excited about with this team. But I think the next couple teams I like a lot more. So let's get into the team number.
Do you guys buy Devontae Adams as a Jet?
I don't.
There's people who are convinced it's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm really skeptical of it.
I don't see it happening.
They rumored it last offseason too, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, and Devontae Adams even said, I know it's, how can you believe a player because it could happen and be not even in his control, but he came out and said that it wasn't going to happen. So I tend to believe he's just going to be staying where he's at one more year. All right, where are we at? We're at number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 team ranked as high as 3, as low as 4. It is TK Wood. Brian, this is your team here.
Yeah, TK Wood ranked number 3. I think I have them number 3 as well. Yeah. So given the 10-team format, I think we're a little thin at QB here. Just for those who don't know, we're looking at Mahomes. I think he's in a tier of his own. He's going to he's like him and that Kansas City offense this year are gonna
people are sleeping on him.
Like they're gonna be
weird to say that.
We are so back, like they are so back. But Jaden Daniels, obviously we like him. Exciting rookie, lots of upside, great rusher, high draft capital, et cetera, et cetera. He happened to be behind Drake May for me in my rankings and remains so. I can get into that, but it would take a long time. I just think you've got some bust potential and some uncertainty, especially when behind him we're looking at Spencer Rattler, Jordan Travis, and Justin Fields. All have upside, all have bust side. I just would want a safer
side. I like that.
I don't know. Is that a thing? I would want a safer quarterback room. I think Kyron is a little overvalued, but he kind of goes back and forth week to week because it's the offseason and overvalued, undervalued, but obviously solid. I said before James Cook could be a discount, light version of Jahmyr Gibbs this year. When I'm looking at the running backs, I think it's a good group, and it's how I like to build with running backs. I like a lot of them. And I like pass catchers, and I like young guys, right? So Kyron Williams, James Cook, Charbonnet. Watch out for Charb this year. Marshawn Lloyd.
I hope you're right.
Listen, he could fumble and bonehead play his way out of, onto the bench, but he also has dynamic upside and has both standalone and contingent upside. Like, it's well within the range of outcomes that Josh Jacobs' role is more of like a narrower AJ Dillon prototype, and Lloyd is the Aaron Jones in the offense, and he's going to be the guy you want even in 2024. Nick Chubb, again, like I said before, I love Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb has been a great story. A big injury in college, underrated, has been an underdog. Just quietly is one of the best running backs in football every darn year. But he's 29. He's coming off his second catastrophic knee injury, and I just don't see it for him this year, especially in a 10-team league. I mean, yeah, sure, stash him. Maybe he's a trade chip, but I happen to love Luke Musgrave even before the Tucker Kraft injury. I think he's got more upside than Kraft, who is good. So if I am going to stash a tight end on this team, make it a young guy who's going to run up the seam, and catch some balls. We're looking at the I'm sorry, I'm still gushing about the running backs. We've got the rugby guy, and that could pan out, right? Because, behind Pacheco is CEH and a long line of Flotsam and Jetsam. And so, he might see some kick return stuff and then work his way into, maybe some gadget plays. Gainwell, Hubbard, he's going to start the year with Brooks injured. So maybe wait for him to produce and trade him. But either way, he's got contingent upside when we've got Brooks back. Michael Carter, talk out of camp is he's the RB2, not at least for now. And Benson may have to learn a little bit more. Probably in a 10-team league, don't need him. But this is what I mean by, like, I want my cupboard full of running backs that have at least, a little bit of contingent upside. You want young guys and you want pass catchers. Keaton Mitchell. I love Keaton Mitchell, man. It was a UDFA or round 7. Great story. Really bad knee injury, and they drafted Rasheen Ali. I'd be careful with him. Find a person who believes. Wide receivers, we're looking at, I think, some pretty solid wide receivers overall. Nothing too, nothing to really critique there. That's stands out to me. I missed he had Kittle. I was scrolling through the running backs. If you're gonna have a tight end in this league, have Kittle.
Yeah.
Nico. My pants are getting tight. Nico. Michael Pittman. Listen, some people are poo-pooing his ceiling, right? And he's, but great floor, volume guy, can run a slant, RPOs with Richardson. I think he'll be fine. But I would like to see the bench depth wide receivers improve, because we're looking now at Cedric Tillman, Jacob Cowing, Juju, Van Jefferson, Sky Moore. We need I like the fact that you went like more running backs and fewer receivers, but in a 10-team league, I want those bench receivers better. And in this format, no reason to have Dawson Knox or Davis Allen on your team. I mean, are you really waiting to have a Kincaid handcuff in a league like this? Does that even really give you value? But of course, we love 2 firsts in the cupboard and the first in 2026. So overall, strong team. The top 3 for me were really close, and that's all I got.
Yeah, I love it, and I like what you said about Kittle too. If you're gonna have a tight end in a league this like this, you're gonna want Kittle, because he can win you a week, right? He has that unlimited upside. He has those 3 touchdown, 180 yards type games where he can win you a week. So he's the kind of tight end, if you're going to start one, he's definitely one you want to start. You mentioned the quarterback room. Patrick Mahomes at the top is, you can never go wrong with that, but it kind of falls off after that. Daniels, I think he's going to be fine, but there's always that potential that he could be an injury risk. He's a smaller guy. He's a running quarterback. So, and then like you mentioned, you got not anything really behind him that you could start, at least initially. Maybe Justin Fields eventually earns that job in Pittsburgh, but for now he's a backup. So that leaves you in a tough spot if there is an injury. But overall, solid roster. I had them ranked, I believe, at 4. Draft capital is good. You mentioned the couple of first-round picks that he has next year. And yeah, starting Nick Chubb, I think currently he hasn't been in the starting lineup. That's a little bit ambitious. I think you're going to have to probably find another running back to put in your starting roster, and I don't know if you necessarily have that guy. So that would be a weakness I would see there as well. I don't know if Chubb starts the season, and if he does start the season, he's not going to be the Nick Chubb that we used to know. Maybe it's
somebody that I used to know.
Oh, well, Shane's breaking out in the song. That must mean it's time to move on to the next team. Anything quickly, Shane, you want to mention about this team?
This team is eerily similar to my Scott Fishbowl team, so I hope they do well.
Yeah, just for your own purposes, right?
Yes, I've got Mahomes, Kyron, Pittman, and Daniels.
Good stuff. All right, let's get to number 2. Number 2 team ranked unanimously as the number 2 team. It is Talk of the Town. Shane, take it away.
Holy cow. From a dynasty perspective, your quarterback room is pretty. Real pretty. CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and then Caleb Williams. I don't mind Aiden O'Connell as a fourth QB. I don't know what the hell is going to happen in Las Vegas. So I mean, that's a great start right there. Then you've got Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery. I think those are great floor plays for you from a running back perspective. You've got Zeke and Rico for the Cowboys. You've got Tyler Algier, who has had some flexibility in the past. We'll see if that goes away with now that Arthur Smith is no longer in town. And then you have two of the top, 10 dynasty wide receivers in CeeDee Lamb and Marvin Harrison Jr. I absolutely love that for you. Keon Coleman has to be the guy this year in Buffalo, as well as Dalton Kincaid, if they're going to maintain any level of success, I think. I've always been a Najee Harris guy. Who knows what Arthur Smith does? Does he come in and screw up like he did with Bijan? I don't know. But I love Najee, especially playoff Najee. Like, playoff Najee is super underrated. Then you've got AD, at least on the spreadsheet, AD Mitchell, Jahan Dotson, Chase Brown. Those are some guys with some question marks, but Jahan Dotson is going to have, I think, improved quarterback play. Chase Brown could be the starting running back in Cincy, or he's going to be in a nice timeshare with Zach Moss. You've got Darnell Mooney, who's a solid flex wide receiver on your bench. And then Cole Kmet's probably the only other person that I'm really in love with, if you will. I think especially the starting lineups, the 1 and 2 teams came really, really close. And I think we all agree on what pushed the number 1 team up there. But overall, this team is really solid. And if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, he is going to be QB1 in fantasy.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, when I logged in, you two had already done your ranks, and I looked at these two teams that we have the number 1 team and number 2 team both ranked unanimously as the same. But I really, really wanted to put this team ahead of the other.
I did too,
and I just couldn't do it. I just think this team has enough. Maybe that's kind of like iffy. You have Chase Brown and Ezekiel Elliott currently in your starting lineup. Those are things you go, maybe. Keon Coleman being a starter also. I love Keon Coleman. I drive the Keon Coleman hype bus, or whatever you want to call it, hype train. So I'm high on him. I don't know if I want him as my starter, especially when I have Dalton Kincaid there as well. But solid team. You mentioned the quarterbacks. It's very hard to have a better quarterback room than that. With that said, the next team I think might have a better quarterback room, but CJ Stroud, Richardson, the Caleb Williams this year, that's a solid 3 young quarterbacks that have a ton of potential. What about you, Brian? What do you see with this team here?
Yeah, I mean, Richardson's ready to break fantasy this year, so wheels up there. Very good first 3 quarterbacks. We've got some, but this is one of those teams where, again, it's like we've got some signs of wear and tear, and it's like, ooh, stitch in time saves 9. Might be, might be good to be early moving off Josh Jacobs. I love Monty. I think he's undervalued, but again, we've got an aging running back there. Dowdle and Elliott, especially Elliott, there's just little things here and there where I'm like, we could, I don't like the wide receiver depth and things like that. So I think it's a somewhat fragile team. Like if chaos hits, this is not a team that's prepared for that. If Caleb Williams struggles out of the gate, if Anthony Richardson, I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, he's going to get hurt, but if he is not the passer we think he is, or he does indeed get hurt, Stroud regresses, off a historic rookie season, et cetera, et cetera. This is not a team that's built for.
I'll be so shocked if Stroud regresses.
Yeah. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be at all. I think he's overvalued, actually.
With what they added in the offseason, though, I
feel
like they've set him up for success to not.
Well, yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, but Slowick early in the year, people were mad because he was running too much, and then he went out and got Joe Mixon. What do you think he's going to do?
Yeah.
I guess I'm just lower on Diggs, and I think I'm looking at to repeat that season, for Stroud to repeat that season or do better. A lot of things have to go right, and odds are, like odds are Sam Laporta ain't gonna score that many TDs this year. And when you strip away the TDs, he was Dalton Kincaid the last 11 weeks of the season. So
yeah, that's a fair point. All right, we have reached the number one team.
Number one.
The number one team, and I'm curious because I hope that, that they purchase another PLP next year, because his team name is definitely next year. So we will see if he's definitely right on that. Brian, this is your squad here. Give us your breakdown on team number one.
yeah, so like I got a lot to say about this team, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. Shout out to Doc, who's gonna watch this and listen to this and say, "Oh, you guys are just enamored and hypnotized by 4 first-round picks and young players, and don't you like to win championships and all that kind of thing." When we do this exercise as show me the orphan, do I want to take it over? This is the one that I want to take over. But that doesn't mean that it's like great and has no flaws and doesn't need work and that sort of thing. So let's talk about definitely next year. The QBs after Kyler have upside, but given the 10-team league, we're also looking at some thinness and some uncertainty. I might trade one of either Drake May or JJ McCarthy to Believers to maybe get a safe. I would, yeah. I mean, I love May. I would, not that I hate McCarthy. So what I want then is like a little bit of a safer veteran in return, and I may even be able to get a plus on top of it because JJ is a first-round rookie, right? We've got a pretty good running back group. Again, it's how I like to build with running backs as far as like the number and the type of running backs I'm going after. I mean, Breece Hall, like he could, it's within the range of outcomes. He's RB1 this year, like the RB1. Achane, we all know about the upside there. Puka, I do think regresses off a historic rookie season, but is still very solid. DK, I think undervalued with the new offensive coordinator. Same thing with JSN. The case against optimism for JSN is so he was used so poorly. If you look at his numbers on the outside versus when he was in the slot and just getting these 4-yard ADOT passes, he was very good. And we know he's super talented, right? And we know we have an offensive coordinator coming in who's very good and who used 3 wide receivers very well at UW, right? So I understand he had a disappointing rookie season relative to expectations, but come on, folks, Devontae Adams, I worry about him between Agecliff and his quarterbacks. I worry about him, but solid trade piece for a team like this who doesn't look to be doing it for this year. They're doing it for next year. Bowers, love Bowers, pants tight. Not a Swiftie anymore, but he could have some upside with volume. Pearsall steps into a role if anybody gets hurt. We love him. Jake Ferguson, yeah, he's a routes guy. He gets all this stuff on routes volume. Really, no need for him in a league like this. I want to talk about the running backs though a little bit, because when I look at Blake Watson and Jaleel McLaughlin on the same team, I find that very interesting. I'm one of the people who, although I'm starting to look a little bit wrong, I would not be surprised if Estime and Blake Watson are the Ingram, Kamara, and the Sean Payton offense in 2025.
Really?
Now, I don't know what that means for Jaleel this year. There's a lot of buzz on him, but he's a UDFA from, what was it, Youngstown State, Appalachian State. This kind of stuff annoys me because I was on Jaleel McLaughlin before people knew he existed, and now the market's gone so far past me. I'm like, whoa, slow down. I'm not, but it's just really interesting to me to have both on the same team, because I think I would stash them both and one of them's going to work out and you have a win, So I think that's very good. Lauby, good pass catching upside on an offense that, isn't great, but Zamir White is this year's Alexander Madison. He's just the volume guy that we're assuming is going to be good, and he's not going to be good. And he can't catch passes, so Lauby's a good guy to have.
You know what's funny, Brian?
What's it?
that Alexander Madison is on the roster too.
Yeah. Garendo, I think, size speed, very tantalizing, but I think he starts slow as a special teamer. There's a very good possibility that Mitchell maintains the job, at least for now. So you're stashing Garendo. People like Cody Schrader as well. Then ever since like Trey Sermon and Tyrion Davis-Price, there's the joke that you take the second running back that the 49ers draft. But either way, upside there. Tyrone Tracy, pass catching, he'll make the roster. Special teams, definitely upside there. There's not much ahead of him in Devin Singletary, who's a good player, who's solid. But is Devin Singletary on that offense? You've got Mitchell too. All right. You've got Khalil Herbert. People think he's going to get traded or land somewhere, and it's like,
I've
okay,
seen that a lot this week.
Okay, fine. But we're doing Chicago as one of our backfields on Saturday tomorrow night live, and it's like they have nobody after Swift, Roschon, and Herbert. They have Travis Homer and their fullback blasting game, right? They can't really afford to lose Herbert, right?
Don't besmirch the name of Kari Blasingame.
And Herbert's the best pure rusher on the team, so there's definitely some upside. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about stashing running backs that have upside, especially upside for when things might go wrong, like an injury or if the market's wrong or something like that. So I'm really into this team. Hunter Renfrow, yeet. Mims and Troy Franklin, upside. One of them's going to be fine. Jaheim Bell, yeet. But I want to talk to you about your 4 firsts.
Yeah.
It's very tempting to sit on them throughout the whole season because they're going to be so valuable at draft time and their price is going to go up, and I get that. But one of the reasons that we stash picks isn't to pick 4 rookies who all have bust potential in the first round. It's their currency, their liquid currency. So don't be afraid to cash 1 or 2 of those in if you see a good opportunity this year. I'm not saying you're playing for this year because your name is definitely next year, but don't just be like, oh, those are locked away until spring. So yeah, this would be a team that I would love to take over.
Yeah, 100%. And that draft capital is what pushed it over the top for me. I think that's what I was alluding to earlier about the team that we ranked second was what pushed it over the other team was the draft capital. Because that would be fun to play with. Like Brian said, it's like currency. You can decide to sell it during the season and tier up or, however you want to do it. But there's just so much you can do with that much draft capital, especially in the 10-team leagues for sure. Shane, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, other than the 4 first, I just like the way that this team built. I agree with Brian. Trade JJ McCarthy. I think I was actually looking on dynastydaddy.com for a trade for you. Maybe throw JJ McCarthy in one of your firsts. Don't quote me on this just yet. Let's throw that there. Yeah, JJ McCarthy in one of your firsts to the guy that has Dak and go get Dak.
Yeah. If you're going for it for this year, if you're definitely next year, then maybe you do that.
But to Brian's point about JSN, I think perspective really matters with JSN. Because if you expected JSN to just come in and blow the doors off because he's a first-round wide receiver out of Ohio State, your expectations probably weren't met. But if you factor in the fact that he was behind DK Metcalf and behind Tyler Lockett in his rookie year, and like Brian mentioned, misused, the fact that he's
injured, in preseason.
Yeah. He still had 93 targets, which to me was still shocking with the way that people talk about him. So I agree with Brian that I think JSN has a ton of upside still that's been unrecognized. I think the one area that probably concerns me most is RB2 being Devin Achane. And the only reason for that is, one, we don't know how consistent he's going to be with how they run their offense. And 2, he does have a slight injury history. So another position that I might throw a first at, depending on who you're looking at, is go find another running back that you can kind of plug in either as a flex or kind of an insurance policy to Devin Achane's variability.
I would maybe even add that another option is, why have so much value stored in running back if you really do think this year isn't your year? and trade one of Brees or HN for like a package, like a couple picks plus like a wide receiver or something. And so, move off one of them. Because a lot of people and I am guilty of this too with Dynasty. It's like we think like if we trade like the one player, they're gone forever, right? It's like you can always buy back in if the price is good. You're just moving things around based on the market. And right now you want to be a little more liquid because you're going for next year. And then with that liquidity, you can, if you think you can, strike while the iron's hot, maybe even make a playoff push this year.
Yeah, 100%. And to go back on the JSN thing, I always find it funny. We do this a lot with tight ends where we draft a guy with a caveat, right? Like, I'm going to draft him because, even though he's going to be behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, I think he'll be better in years to come. And then we knock it against him in the offseason. Like, oh, he didn't have a great rookie season. Well, we knew that going in that he wasn't going to have a good rookie season. We do the same thing with tight ends. Like, oh, tight ends are never good in their first year. We draft them, they have a bad first year, and then we're ready to get rid of them. It's like we knew that going in. So just stick to your game plan. I'm sure you knew when you drafted JSN that he was going to, struggle his first year, but I think potentially could overtake Lockett this year and be the guy you thought you drafted, last year. So
same thing with Rome Odunze this year.
It's almost the exact same scenario. It's just different quarterback and a different team. But yeah, for the same thing, I would say Rome Odunze might not have the rookie season that we would all hope that he would have when we first, ranked these guys pre-draft. But, down the road, I think he would definitely be a guy you'd want on your roster. All right, let's do dark horses, Shane. What you got for a dark horse team here?
Oh, shit. I was not ready for that fast.
Sorry about that.
I'm going to surprise people here, I think. I'm actually going to go with the team that I ranked 10th. Man of the People, I think, could be a dark horse this year. You're welcome, Godstrike. With the way that Purdy played last year, Tua is one of my favorite guys. And just the rest of that roster, I do think that you could make a playoff run if things land correctly.
Yeah, that's a good call. Actually, that was the one I was going to go with, so you kind of stole my thunder there. But Brian, you got a dark horse team?
I think probably one of the middlers that we talked about, where I was talking about like they're in the middle because we may not want to take them over, a lot. But there's 1 year upside, so maybe one of them. But I'm going to do the cop out answer and say if things break right and wait for next year, or definitely next year, uses their chips well, this could be the beginning of something really good for them.
Yeah, I love it. So I was gonna pick Hurt So Good because we have him ranked at 9, but then I realized he was the back-to-back champion, and I don't know if that's necessarily a dark horse, if you can call that. And then I saw Man of the People. Okay, I'll go with Man of the People, and then Shane took him. So I'll take a different team, and I'll go with the redraft team in this league, the diehards. Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones. We got a new addition to the podcast making her first appearance. Shane's got a new one there, newborn there. So I think that, obviously that team is stacked for this year. Now going forward after the season, it might be difficult, but for this year, I think that team could potentially make some noise this season.
That was my other choice, but I didn't. They felt like a cop out because we called them a redraft team.
Yeah, essentially in it for this year for sure. All right, fellas, that wraps the podcast up. Thank everybody in the chat that joined. Anybody that's listening on audio now that may have missed the live show, appreciate y'all making a purchase once again. Always fun to do your leagues. We'll go around the room real quick, gentlemen. Give us your Twitter handle, anything you're working on you want to plug. We'll go to you first, Brian.
Yeah, at FFJunkie_ on the Twitters. With Going for Two live, we do a Dynasty Saturday Night 5 on Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Me and Josh, it looks like we're going to be live tomorrow night. Yes. And we're going to be talking about some running backs. At Dynasty Fever Pod is another project I have. We're on a bit of a hiatus in the off season. Shout out my co-host Jesse Schneeman, though. It's his 50th birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday, Jesse. And yeah, I'm going to probably drop an article or two before the regular season starts. And yeah, these are always fun. I really like doing them. we were talking in the chat. I was sick earlier today, and I was like really, really tired before we started. But like, I don't know, man. Like, for better or for worse, you start getting me talking about dynasty fantasy football, and something happens. I don't know.
That's like how you want, Brian. You do a great job too. Appreciate it. Shane.
Your pants get tight, right, Brian?
Oh yeah.
Jeff, thanks for having me as usual. You have a week off from me for now. But you guys can follow me on Twitter or Elon Musk's Funhouse, whatever you want to call it, at FFShaneB or at Polly's Playoff. Polly's Playoff is still open for registrations until July 29th at pollysplayoff.com. I do have a podcast for that. I have slacked on editing it, so need to get the next episode of that out. There is one coming down the road with a certain guy coming up, if I can ever actually get it edited.
This one?
Yeah, yours already came out.
Mine came out.
There was one with him too over there. So yeah, I hate pointing on camera. I never get it right. So check that out. It's called Polly's Playoff Features. And then I'll go ahead and announce it. I am going to start writing for the FF League winners, doing strictly Auburn football content, not even fantasy.
Nice.
I'm just writing about Auburn football. So I am super excited for that. And my first article should be coming out soon.
Good stuff. Love it. I love it. As always, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We have our show, the RC Show, every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. We're actually in the middle of our I Hate Division Previews because I hate division previews. We try to put a fun spin on it by doing it in a mock draft format, where we do a 2-round mock draft of a division. You can only take players from that division. Makes it a little bit interesting. I had Shane on this past Wednesday. We did the NFC and the AFC South. Also played a new game that I debuted this past week called Dynasty Bullshit. And Shane crushed it. So definitely check that out. That should be on the audio and on the video. This week, I think we're doing the NFC and the AFC East on Wednesday night at 9:30. So check that out for sure. All right, fellas, for Shane, for Brian, Jeff, and thanks again to the league for your purchase. And we hope you'll get another purchase next year. And we'll see y'all next year.